For this upcoming free agent class, there's kind of a three-headed monster on the defensive side of things. Three defensemen that definitely could potentially become available, and I would say if they all three of them do, they're kind of the three clear kind of top guys that are going to be available potentially in this upcoming free agent class. And those three guys are Vladislav Gavrikov, Aaron Ekblad, and of course, Ivan Provorov. But we're going to talk more about Vladislav Gavrikov in today's video, as it definitely seems like he is potentially going to hit free agency there. He could be leaving the LA Kings, and if that does happen there have been some reports coming out linking him to the New York Rangers, and of course the Rangers being a team that desperately need to add in a great top four caliber left-handed defenseman. It really does make a whole lot of sense there, and kind of why these two, being the Rangers and Gavrikov, are being linked together. So in today's video, we're going to talk about this whole situation here with Vladislav and kind of talk about what his potential contract could look like there. We've got some comparables. We're going to take a look at a quote here from an Elliot Friedman article there, his 32 Thoughts article. We'll take a look at kind of what he had to say on this situation as well, and just some more news involving the Rangers and Gavrikov, as this could potentially be a perfect fit for both sides there. Gavrikov being a guy who's looking to get paid, and the Rangers are obviously, like I said, desperately in need of adding in a true top four caliber left-handed defenseman. So this definitely could be a perfect fit for both sides. And there are, of course, many reasons for the Rangers to go out there and acquire a guy like Vladislav Gavrikov in free agency, right? One being, of course, the Rangers were a pretty bad defensive team for the most part this past season there. They definitely were not too good on that side of things there. So adding in a true top four, even top pairing caliber guy really in Gavrikov would be such a huge addition to this team, but also it would be such a massive ad for a guy like Adam Fox, because if you're going to put a guy like Gavrikov alongside Foxy, and, Mike Sullivan hypothetically wants to create a true kind of top pair for this team, well, that would be by far pretty much, Adam Fox's best defense partner, right? You take a look kind of who he's been with over the past few years now. It's been Ryan Lindgren pretty much, game in and game out there for the most part, bearing any injuries. And I think that is clearly, not the greatest kind of, guy to have on your top pair, right? I mean, yes, Ryan Lindgren at moments can be, I would say, a definitely kind of top four caliber guy. He may not be a kind of high-end top four caliber defenseman, but at moments when he's playing, near his kind of best there, he is a second pairing caliber guy, you could definitely say. But let's be honest here, he's not a top pairing kind of guy. So if you're able to go out there and add in a big kind of, fairly tough, fairly physical, just really good, reliable defensive defenseman there who can move the puck a bit as well, but just be a good, reliable, big veteran defensive defenseman there, and put that alongside a guy like Adam Fox, who we know can be a Norris Trophy caliber guy, a true number one caliber defenseman, a top three or even like top two kind of guy in the entire league, right? He can be that at moments. And I think over the last kind of while now, Adam Fox has still been a good, top pair caliber guy, of course, but he hasn't quite been that, kind of peak Adam Fox caliber guy that we know he definitely can be. And I think putting alongside him a guy like Gavrikov, who I would say is a true kind of number two caliber defenseman, like he is at least about at that level, if not at that level, which I do think he is. So adding in a guy like this alongside Fox, he would, I think, help him out a ton there, because now you don't have to worry, if you're Adam Fox, you don't have to worry as much about kind of the defensive play when you're with a guy like Gavrikov, who you can maybe have a little more trust in, to kind of help you out a little more on the defensive end compared to a guy like a Lindgren or whoever else he's been with. So I think that in itself would be such a big thing for Fox. Maybe we see him kind of, get back into those Norris Trophy conversations there if he is alongside a guy like Gavrikov there, because that can just help him out so much and kind of take a little bit of the pressure off him, because he knows, well, hey, I've got a true kind of number two caliber defenseman, a true top pairing caliber guy alongside me who is a, very good defensive, reliable guy. So that's where I do think could also, not just help the entire decor out as a whole, but also really help out specifically Adam Fox, to maybe help him kind of get back up there to being that kind of, true kind of top three caliber defenseman in the entire NHL, or at least be in those Norris Trophy conversations. So to me, that's why I really do think, Gavrikov being added in here not only helps the entire team, but also potentially Adam Fox as well quite a bit. And There's no guarantee of that, though. Maybe Mike Sullivan, they bring in Gavrikov here, and Mike Sullivan wants to go out there and kind of have, just kind of two really good pairs there where you split up, Gavrikov and Foxy there, which is definitely a possibility, right? That definitely could happen there. But if this team wanted to go out there and kind of stack up that top pair there and create a true kind of, shut down top pair there, just overall a great defense pair and probably one of the best in the entire NHL, they could definitely do that with Gavrikov alongside Foxy. So that's why I do think adding a Gavrikov could be such a huge addition. And now let's take a look here at the 32 Thoughts article from Elliot Friedman, where he goes on to say in the article about Gavrikov and the Rangers, Ekblad staying changes the defense market. It put the Flames in even better position with Rasmus Andersson, in kind of trade talks, I guess. Among left shots, Vladislav Gavrikov is not believed to have a long list of places he wants to go if he leaves Los Angeles, which is why so many are pointing to the Rangers. So that in itself, I think is a great thing there, of course. It definitely would make a lot of sense there as, the Rangers are a big market team there, of course. They have money to spend. They're going to have some room to possibly go out there and pay a guy like Gavrikov around that kind of mark that I'm sure he wants. And we'll take a look kind of my contract prediction for him and also some comparables in a second here. But I think obviously it definitely would make a lot of sense there why the Rangers would be, one of those kind of few places that he may want to go to if he does end up leaving Los Angeles, because this team is also one that could definitely kind of bounce back and get right back on track there, especially after adding in a guy of Vladislav Gavrikov's caliber there. He could definitely be one of those pieces that really kind of helps, turn this team back around there to get this team back into the playoffs and possibly competing for that cup. So I think that in itself makes a lot of sense there why Gavrikov would want to come to the Rangers. And next up here, let's take a look at my contract prediction for Vladislav Gavrikov. And also, we're going to take a look at 4 different contract comparables here for, Gavrikov's possible next contract here to kind of really get an idea on what his next deal could possibly look like. And 2 of those players are free agents from last offseason there, and 2 of them are from, this past season where they signed extensions. So let's get into it though here and take a look at my contract prediction, which I do have Vladislav Gavrikov signing a 7-year deal at about $7.5 million to possibly upwards of kind of the $8 million cap hit mark. And I think something around there is definitely quite realistic. I don't think it's going to go much more than 8, and I also don't think it'd be much less than 7.5. So something around there is kind of my guess. If it got a little bit above 8, I wouldn't be surprised. And if it went maybe a little bit below 7.5, I kind of doubt that. But of course, it is still technically possible. I just think he's going to get somewhere around this mark. And I do think this, if the Rangers can sign him within this kind of mark here, 7.5 to 8 mil, I'd be more than happy with that. I think something around there is definitely quite reasonable and kind of fair for a guy of this kind of caliber here. I think Gavrikov is a true kind of number 2 or at least high end number 3 caliber defenseman. He's a very good player, and I think for this Rangers team is a guy who brings a lot of what this team is kind of lacking right now. He may not be the kind of type of physical player that ideally you want to see added in here, but everything else about his game is pretty much kind of perfect and exactly kind of what this team needs there. So I think bringing him in would be a real difference for this team and could really be that kind of difference between having a not great defense core once again and possibly kind of getting back up there into the top half, because this team defensively was definitely kind of bottom half, bottom 10 for sure last season there. But adding in a guy like Gavrikov just by himself there and having some other guys maybe play a little bit better around him there could definitely kind of project and propel this kind of defense core right back up into the top half at least there. So I think adding in Gavrikov would be a real big difference maker for this team. And for some contract comparables here, we'll take a look at the 2 free agent guys first off who signed last offseason. And the first guy here is Brandon Montour, who signed a 7-year deal, leaving the Florida Panthers and going over to the Seattle Kraken, where he got a 7-year deal with a cap hit of $7.142 million per season. So I think, we're definitely going to see Gavrikov get a little bit more than that, especially with it being, of course, a year later on there with the cap going up that much more. He's obviously, I would say, going to get paid more than Montour there, somewhat around the same level there, but I would expect Gavrikov to definitely get a little more than what he got, of course. And next up here, we've got Brady Shea, who went from the Carolina Hurricanes to the Nashville Predators in last offseason's free agency, and he signed a I would say an overpay of a deal there. He wasn't quite worth this amount, but he got a 7-year deal worth $7 million per season. To me, that is a clear overpay, and I think obviously Gavrikov is going to get paid more than that, and especially with it being another year along there with the cap going up that much more, his deal is definitely going to be more than that $7 million mark, and he's obviously, I would say, a clear better defenseman than Brady as well. I think this was just a clear overpay in my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's not kind of the worst kind of comparable to look at, I guess, for Gavrikov, just contract-wise. Then you've, of course, got Shea Theodore, who signed an extension this past season there, it being a 7-year deal with the Las Vegas Golden Knights, worth $7.425 million per season. So pretty kind of close there to what Gavrikov is probably going to get, and I would say both defensemen are, fairly close in kind of, skill level as well. Then you've got Neil Pionk there, who signed an extension as well this past season there, and it being a 6-year deal worth $7 million per season. Not terribly far off of what I think Gavrikov is going to get, but I would say Gavrikov is a better defenseman than, the former Ranger in Neil Pionk, of course, and I do think he's obviously going to get more than that, but it is a somewhat decent kind of comparable to take a look at. So basically, my point being, I think Gavrikov is going to sign somewhere around that 7-year deal mark worth $7.5 to $8 million, something around that range there, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but something around that kind of range is my guess. And I think if the Rangers do sign him to a deal around that kind of, figure there, I think that's a more than a kind of a fine deal. Gavrikov obviously isn't super young there. He is up there in age a little bit there. He is turning 30 in November, so you'd be taking him into his kind of, later 30s there, but I don't think, it's obviously not like he's like 32, so you're not taking him until he's like, 39 kind of range there. So I think this deal should be all right there if he does sign a 7-year deal with the Rangers, and I really do think he could be a big difference maker for this team. Anyways, that's going to do it for today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post every single day. And of course, also definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on the Rangers potentially going out there and, signing Vladislav Gavrikov. Do you think that's kind of the right player to pick up there? Do you want to sign him to that kind of, 7-year deal around that kind of $7.5 to $8 million mark? Because that's probably what he's going to get, something around that kind of a cap hit. Do you want to see that kind of a deal happen? Do you want to see the Rangers get Gavrikov? Let me know your thoughts on him and this possible kind of free agent signing in the comment section down below. I'll catch you in the next one, and let's go Rangers.